Call this session to order. Yeah, we're going to need to do another roll call, please, Town Clerk.
Mayor Fidel,
Present.
Vice Mayor Toth,
Present.
Councilmember Earl,
Here.
Councilmember McMahon, Councilmember Skillicorn, and we're waiting on Councilmember Calavianakis and Councilmember Watts.
Rachel?
All right, just to kind of kick us off and get the ball rolling here, we're going to have Paul sort of introduce the CIP, how it works, some of the funding mechanisms, and then really you're going to hear both from Director Snipes and Director Weldy on the proposed projects. Just a couple of reminders, I sent them out last night, but just for the good of the discussion, we kind of adopted a red light, yellow light, green light process last year that really helped staff understand what the priorities were and where they could get going. And then those that the council would like to see back. So really, as we move through these projects, I'd like to get a sense of projects that are greenlit, where we agree that they need to get done and staff has the authority to move forward. Projects that are yellow are projects that you may still see value in, but have questions or want a little more clarification and would like to see them brought back, but they will be included in the budget. Any projects that we will not move forward with today will be considered red lights and we will pull them out of the budget and they will not be on the table when we come back April 8th. But that's kind of what we're looking for today. This is the best opportunity to let us know if there are projects that are in here that you want to see or do not want to see. We're not adding more projects. This is kind of the final list. This is where we're looking for that final direction. Any questions or anything else before we get rolling? Okay. Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Before we begin today's work session, we felt that it was important to give you an idea of our funding sources for these projects within our various buckets. So on your screen are estimated fund balances for fiscal year 26 at the beginning of the year. Today we have over $10 million in the capital projects fund, but we project to have about $8.5 million to begin next fiscal year after projects are completed. We will also transfer fiscal year 25 general fund excess reserves into the capital projects fund as required by policy. Our streets fund has about $11 million and our development impact fee funds have about $2.5 million. On this screen, you'll kind of see within the $11.7 million of proposed capital projects where those funding sources are. So you'll see that we're planning for $5.4 million of streets funding, $2.5 million of capital projects funding, and $2.3 million of grant reimbursements. We also have $800,000 and $700,000 of development impact fee funding. So as Rachel mentioned, for green light projects, that indicates that council has fully authorized town staff to move forward on these projects, including procurement, contracts, and begin construction. Yellow light projects indicate that council has approved the project to move forward, but we'll bring it back to council to discuss construction costs. And red light projects will remove from the budget. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Thanks, sir. All right, here we go. One more round of capital improvements. Mayor and Council, there's a lot that's going on and a lot that continues to go on. So we'll kind of roll through where we're at now and where we're looking at being over the next 5 years for capital, the things that we know are coming down the pike, we have listed in here as well. Our first one's the Centennial Pavilion Shade Lighting Project. This is a $50,000 project, and we're looking to help bring some illumination to the area, of course, making sure that we're conscious of the dark sky area. This is just for the lighting underneath the shade structure. that currently has none. We've been working with a group that has both state and national dark sky experience in doing lighting, and we think we've come up with a way to do that that will not stand out as being lighting during the day, but provide adequate lighting during the evening hours when we have a lot of scheduled groups to come in, as well as what we anticipate will be even more so as the Dark Sky Discovery Center gets completed. Do we want to hit each one and kind of talk about each one as we go through? Or do you want to go to the end and do it as we get to that final page?
We have a question from a council member. Use your mic.
As you guys go through these, I know that we've talked about so many different things with these and grant money, et cetera. So would you please say if there's any grant money involved that we're using for that, if we voted for it or whatever? Because I remember there was something about lighting and some, so I think for clarification purposes and for us to make a decision on it, we'd need that information. Thank you.
So currently there is no grant funding for this project. There is a grant that we're looking into, but what we'd like to do is go through and get capital improvement, and as you all know, we'll continue to search for grants on anything that we think is viable to get grants for, and if we get those, we'll bring those back to you so that you'll know that we're going for something as well to help cover the cost. Mm-hmm. So back to question one.
So yes, to chime in on that, just to kind of piggyback on what you just said, I believe there's actually a grant on the agenda next Tuesday specifically for this project. But again, it's just the application. It doesn't mean that we would actually receive those funds. So there's still a lot of steps to be completed. That being said, perhaps it makes sense to go through all of the projects and answer questions so everyone is familiar with them. At the end of there's a summary page, and that's where we can kind of go through and indicate red, yellow, or green.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
Sounds good. Our next project is our multi-year project that we've been working on the avenue. We have the shade structure is ordered. It will, this is going to be right around, we're hoping that June to July timeframe of going to install. We also have been working on getting the event receptacles. This is the one that we've actually selected. It will be in bronze in color to kind of go with the rustic nature of everything that's on the avenue. It has a door that closes, locks, so that we'll only be using this as an event receptacle when there's an event to help minimize the damage or usage or misusage of power outlets all the way down the avenue. It'll have a small ring, as you can see there, of an illuminary light. We're going to be getting...
Is this one included in the 200,000 that was on the first page?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is all part of the avenue improvements.
All right.
And actually, we'll have the east half done this fiscal, and we'll do the west half next fiscal with that exact same product. So some of these are, because this is a multi-year project, we did our best to balance that money however we could to get the best deals and get the most done. With the lighting of the fountains, that is going to be on next fiscal to where that we can do some more vetting. I think we have some things lined up. And then I just need to get some things figured out to finalize that part of the project. We're waiting on some numbers to come back in to see exactly what that'll be, but that is intended to be done next fiscal as well.
Kevin, in that light, how is this integrated into the streets plan with all the iterations that we heard last week? I mean, is it affected in any way? Is it?
Is what part of it? All of it in general?
All of it. I mean,
Yeah,
it depends
so-
it depends on what we end up with as a streets program, if anything.
So nothing that we're doing in the center of the avenue has anything to do with the edges, other than we all know what the options are. Right. Everything that we're doing right now definitely will not need to be changed, modified, or any other way for that. We're still treating the park as being the park, and the streetscapes as being the streetscapes. So there's not an overlay between the two of them.
Okay, thanks.
The next one here is the protection and putting a building over the irrigation pump system and the electrical that you see there hanging on a plywood wall. Probably not the most ideal way for our electrical to be hung, but that's the way it's been. So what we'd like to do is bring all that into a building and separate our pump controls from the pump. If you remember, we talked previously about how last year we had a leak inside the pump room. It was a small enough leak that we didn't see it right away, and a big enough leak that it sprayed right into the electrical of the pump controls. So that being said, that meant that we ended up having to replace pretty much everything that's in that small structure that's out there now. Excuse me. The other thing we'd like to do is start doing fertigation systems where we can do some additives into our irrigation. That's what we're doing currently at both Golden Eagle Park and Fountain Park, and they've been extremely successful. If you see the turf that we're growing now, it is definitely a lot better than the turf we'd been growing in years past. We've been doing it for several years at both Golden Eagle and Fountain Park, but we can't do it currently with this setup at Desert Vista Park. And so we're confident that this would definitely increase our turf ability, our ability to grow good, strong turf there. It's turning around, it's just not where we want it to be, and this would definitely help that.
Kevin, that includes the dog park portion of the park too, right?
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
it's
So
the entire.
the turf improvements would be not only up on the soccer area, but
Absolutely.
also down there. Okay.
Yeah, this would help all turf at Desert Vista Park. It's not separate in any way. The next one is a $50,000 for doing some improvements and doing tree removal, sodding some high traffic areas, working on some areas that have caused notorious flooding from the splash pad area of the dog park. This was one that was brought to staff by both the ADOG group and council members, and so that's why this is in here. And we think that these improvements will go a long way towards doing and making some improvements that are there. The tree that you see there is a pine that's been there for the length of the life that's typical for that type of pine. And so we've seen several of those go down over the last couple of years, and we have several more that are in there that are distressed. And so going to a better shade type tree, I think will go a long way to making it a better dog park area as well.
Director Snipes, can I ask? The previous screen you had that was going to include taking care of the dog park, was that just the fertilizing part?
No, this is just the building and enclosure around the irrigation is what this one's for. So this 300,000 that's here is for that.
But I thought you said, but it would include fertilizing,
Yes.
being able
for
to
the dog.
fertilize
Yeah,
the dog
That's a
park.
park-wide scenario.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that,
There would be no way to separate that. It's
right, yeah,
automatically in
right.
everything.
But I'm saying with the 50,000 here, that part of that was improving the sod or,
Yeah.
wait, somewhere?
Yeah, so
I
that's
don't see
bringing
that
in
there.
new sod in areas that are worn down to the dirt and have been used.
Okay.
We wanna look at that over the years. And so if we can come in and get some new turf in, then the quality, then
Okay.
we can get that to maintain.
Okay, but so essentially, we're actually spending a little more than 50,000 on the dog park. It's all,
Yes.
all together, but, so that should make them happy. We
Yes.
should tell them that, more than 50.
Kevin, when do you anticipate those improvements at the dog park? When will they start?
As far as the dog park itself, will be right after the fiscal starts. we'll start doing some things, yeah.
Mayor, if I may, that's really where we need, when we get to it, if it's a green light project, they start July 1 with a new fiscal year. And that's kind of why we have that process, because in the past, we've waited to come back to council in their first meeting back, which isn't until September, and we've lost the better part of the first quarter of the fiscal year. So having that authority to get going July 1 is very, very helpful to us.
Yeah, to be fair, the ones that we've heard positive things from, we start running on already. We're getting with our contractors and trying to get all of our eggs in a row, because we know what the best time of year is for us to do certain things, and so it's this red light, green light.
Yeah, you have to get a commitment out of them and get your timetable set up.
Absolutely, yeah. Getting the scheduling where we want it to be is extremely important in that.
So in the spirit of clarity, you've already started this one?
We have come up with designs that we want to do for the splash pad. We know what trees we want to bring in, and we know the areas that we want to get the sod in, so absolutely.
But no physical activity?
Absolutely not, no. No, it's never physical. It ahead of the go-ahead in the budget being there, that's not possible.
Gotcha.
So, but what we do is get everything in a row and make sure that everybody's ready to where that we can be as least intrusive on the environment as possible when we go in to do it. Any other questions? Next one here is the new shade structure over at the splash pad. It does not currently have lighting underneath it. We are looking at doing some area type lighting around there to help add some light to the area. I know this has economic development support as well. We heard from some of the business owners as well as some promoters around town that do other events that they would like to use this space, but they would like to use it in the evenings. And it's tougher to do that right now with there not being lights. It would involve bringing in light trailers. So that's where this one kind of came from. We did set it up for electrical in the future. When we did it, we added conduits underneath the sidewalks so that we could get there. This one would definitely make it so that the usage of the area could increase through the hours.
Do we rent that out?
It is rentable.
So we
yes.
do make
As
money
a
from that?
whole- So the way
Okay.
that we have it set up is you can't rent out little pieces of it. It's all or nothing.
Okay.
And that was deliberate to where that it would have to be a large group to be able to come in and use it, to where that you don't have a family of 4 using it and all the other tables are there. We wanted to discourage that usage. We wanted
What
it
is
to be
the
for
rental
business.
fee for that?
We treat it the same as we do the amphitheater area or the Centennial Circle area. I don't know that number off the top of my head, but it's around 900. Yeah, that's what I think too. So yeah, there's definitely ability there, and we've had conversations around doing some concerts in that area as well to help promote business. We started looking into it this year and decided to put it on hold until next year. So next one here is the Fountain Park Ramadas. They're at 22 years right now, and the saltiness of the water combined with some of the design and infrastructure that was put in has created a lot of issues. The roofs of these ramadas have a insulation layer in them. So as soon as moisture got in, the insulation held onto the moisture, and the moisture did its thing to the metal. And now we have rusted holes, as well as we're seeing structural issues on the block, as you can see in those pictures. I've been monitoring those for several years now. And they are getting worse. So this is something where we feel that we do need to move on. I don't think there's a safety issue today, but it's definitely showing signs that there is a safety issue coming. We'd rather be out in front of that. And I spent a couple years trying to get a vendor to come in and just do the roofs, thinking that would be cheaper and fix the structural component. But just doing the roof was coming in at $100,000 per ramada, and I couldn't wrap my head around it, so I tried someone else. Same numbers came in, couldn't wrap it, tried it again. So we're now to the point where we said, if it's 100,000 a piece, then we can rebuild these and put in new ones that are manufactured. So if we need a piece or a part, we can actually get those, because that was the other thing. They used all unique type of roofing, unique, you know, it's way over engineered for what it is. It has a unique look, for sure. But what we'd like to do is go to something that we can get parts for as we need to, if there's something that were to occur. During our Irish Fest this year, I saw 3 kids jumping up and down on this exact structure with their dad watching. I went from panic to anger to panic. Somewhere in there I stayed. And when I got over there, the dad was definitely not caring that his kids were up on the roof. But I was. So this one, I think we need to get it taken care of. And we could do it over the years and do them slowly. And we're planning on a 2-year program here. But it just is something that I think that raised my level of alertness to. The fact that kids are actually climbing up on top of it is bad enough in itself, but even worse knowing that there's a hole up there. So the next one's one that we didn't get to last fiscal. It was approved at that time. It was when I was back where I am now, of having 2 different jobs since, unfortunately, Brandon Putman, our park superintendent, has taken another job, so I'll be holding both hats here for a little bit again, hopefully a shorter period of time. Part of the reason for waiting as well was the sanitary district lowered a manhole that was at the top of the hill, and that's enabling us to cut that hill and make this a cheaper project than what we originally had anticipated. We'd like to get the bollards. You can see in that picture on the left that the bollards go to about where that lady is walking, and they don't continue on back through there. Originally, when the park was redone, this was supposed to have a pony wall, and lights are supposed to be on that, and they took that out of the project, or it didn't get done, I'm not sure which. And so there's not any lighting that goes through this section, and it is a complaint that we get, that it gets pretty dark when you walk along that backside of this hill. So we'd like to correct 2 problems with 1. Any questions on that one?
My assumption is that when you take all of that miscellaneous sized rock out of there, you're going to put back in something larger, riprap of some sorts?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that was the immediate knee-jerk when we didn't have any funding to do anything my first year here. That was flooding out every single time down onto the sidewalk and putting about 1 inch to 2 inches of mud on the sidewalk. Joe really got tired of shoveling mud, so we had lots of rock at the time, and so he started putting some in to slow it down, and it kind of grew into something not as pretty as what it should be, but we'd like to get that corrected. The next one here is the Four Peaks electrical room. As you can see, it's a very small building that's housing a lot of electrical components, both for sports field lighting, court lighting, the irrigation system, and it's too tight of an area for what all's in there. We'd like to get that expanded out, and there's a pad that's already there that we would like to use, the concrete pad that's there, to where that we can also add some storage into a building that we add there and have room for future growth as needed. That one is $50,000 this year for design, and then $200 for the install.
Question.
Sorry, go ahead.
Kevin,
Sure.
Pleasantville Park.
Yep, that's our next one.
That's not the name, that's just a reference, because, you know, it's a star viewing park. That kind of, to me, doesn't go. Maybe we'll have a contest for people to name it if it happens. Okay.
We've had lots of talks
Thank
about that. So the next one is one that was approved for this year. We ended up pulling the, what's my term? It's our cap. We took money from, it wasn't money taken from this. It was just to keep us under the expenditure cap that we took money from this, right? Yeah.
We reduced the budget by 100,000 last year. Is that what you're talking about?
That's why this money got pulled for this year's doing the
No,
project.
it was
For Golden Eagle
it was for a
and-
budget transfer. We used it for a budget
Yeah.
transfer because there were discussions about that.
So the development fee funding didn't get affected at all. What we took was the expenditure allowance and moved it to other projects that needed it. One was Golden Eagle Park, and one, I believe, was Fountain Hills Boulevard. Is that right? It was early on that we made this change, and so we are in the design phase right now. We've selected J2 to work with. So we'll be working on the design right now, and we'll be ready to start breaking ground this summer and fall.
Kevin, and these are funds we have to use by a certain time period, or they go back?
So the development fees that I believe have a 10-year life cycle on them, or we got to give them back to the developers.
Okay, thank you.
So this does not come out of the capital improvement. This is the one oddity in here. The next one, so we're working to get this one done this year. This is on this year's budget. I've asked to have 50,000 carried over just in case this one goes into next year a little bit. We're in the process of getting the order right now, and so it's going to be a tight window. They're confident that they can do it. I'm never that confident. So, but we're hoping to get this in. This is at Golden Eagle Park for the playground replacement that's under the shade structure. I think this is going to be a really cool addition to what's already there. It's going to link directly to the dome that's already there. These are both the same structure, just different angles to look at it. So for that, this is just a carryover. Just wanting to let you know that we are asking to carry over 50,000 if needed to next year. All right, that brings us to our breakdown page for community services. Do we want to go through these now? So red light, green light, yellow light, Centennial Pavilion shade lighting.
So I think we'll just move right down the list if everybody's okay with that. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
We do. So everything that's presented here today fits within our available funds and our available expenditure limitations.
Okay, so we could do them all,
Yes.
Yes, arguably, yes, you could do them all.
because we've seen them a lot. They seem to keep coming back, and it seems to be like what staff would like to really see happen,
Yeah. and
given the improvements that are needed for the electrical and things like that.
Yeah, let me just add to that real quick. We haven't done our final analysis against the expenditure limitation, but because of some of the things we've discussed in other council meetings about our strategy with our exclusions and our carry forward, we feel pretty confident. I'm just stipulating because we haven't done our final analysis yet.
Oh, come on.
That's Paul being cautious.
Crushing my spirit.
What was the amount on the splash pad shade structure? I missed, oh, is it up here? There it is.
50,000 there. It's about halfway down.
50,000? Is there a grant for that one?
No, there's not.
Can I ask a question, please? It looks to me like most of these are needs, for the most part, versus wants, right? And if we agree to them, is there an order of preference that you would like to see them done? Or is it going to be per the money and per the fiscal year, et cetera, like you talked about the dog park? Because like jumping on the roof of the Ramada, those kids and stuff, to me, that's something that may not even be a question whether we authorize that or not.
Yeah, to me, obviously there's some that I'd like to get moving in on sooner than others, but they also may be ones that take longer to get the product for. So it just, like, it's a juggling act. It always has been. And so it's a matter of figuring out which ones we can get the vendors to be able to get out to do them. A lot of times there's multiple different vendors that are involved in doing it, so it's a juggling act between them and wanting to have the least amount of downtime for any spot that we're at. So once I get one group in there, I want that to stay moving until it gets done. I don't like to go in and do demo and then have nothing there for 6 months, because that doesn't sell well either. And we've done a really good job of it over the years, but it's not easy for sure. But yeah, and I know that the roofs can handle 3 kids jumping up and down on it. That much has been proven, so we have done that. But yeah, no, definitely safety always comes first as far as what we'll try and tackle first.
And then Kevin, I think last year I questioned you on this too. The Fountain Park erosion control project for $75,000. You know, that number kind of bothered me last year. It still does. Can you kind of deep dive into that a little more? Because are they going to build a half wall with like the bollards lighting, like you mentioned to Councilmember Watts? Or could you just tell us a little more about that project?
Yeah, what we're looking to do is we're going to cut that slope so it's not so steep. We're going to move it back as far as we can. We may need to move a disc golf tee that's right at the top of that hill to accomplish that. And then it's bringing in new electrical to run for the bollards. And they're over $1,000 each when you start dealing with those, so your prices jump pretty quick with those. They're almost $2,000, I think now. Actually, they were $1,000 when we first started getting them,
Yeah.
so they've gone up. So, and again, if we come in and we're under budget,
Yeah,
we'll do
of course.
that. You know, I can speak to right now the Panorama park project that we're doing. We're going to come back with about $100,000 to put back in because we didn't need it at all. But what I don't want to do is have to come back to you and go, I need 20 more grand.
Yeah.
I don't ever function that way. I always try and come to you with a number that I think is where we need to be, plus a little for protection, and then if I can give it back to you, I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay, yeah. And so it's going to be not only erosion control, but beautification of the park too?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll be planting plants, and there'll be several things that'll happen on that hillside.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a question on the receptacles, electric receptacle, I'm sorry, on the avenue. So that's for events. Is there some way that we're getting reimbursed?
Yeah, we get paid every time they use them.
And that's some of that going towards the receptacle there?
Yeah,
And right now, how did they get electric? Do you have,
Those yellow spider boxes that were out there for the Christmas holiday season.
Okay.
That were sitting out there that I can't stand and are a trip hazard and have
Okay.
a giant cord attached to them. I want to get rid of all of that.
okay,
That would be ideal for me.
good, thank you.
Did you want to take the Four Peaks Electrical Building and use that down at the Desert Vista to cover the pump enclosure? That would save you $50,000.
Oh, take the panorama part?
No, take the one from Four Peaks, the building, the electrical building.
that
that's
little
too,
one?
That's too small. Would that fit down at Desert Vista or no?
You're not helping. You thought it was small before, now it's really small.
So Kevin, I see that, first off, it's good to know that these will fit in our budget, at least at this point in time. But there is a slight degree of specific use, specific users. The structured shade behind, the splash pad favors the businesses more than anything else. The dog park has been an ongoing issue. It's very specific in its usage. So some of these, if they're benefits to the town and all of the population, makes some sense. But the ones that are more specific to time, place of particular individuals, organizations, don't make as much sense to me. So I think the splash pad electrical, I'm not hugely in favor of. The dog park I'm not in favor of, although I can see the need for doing a dog park renovation one time and then turning it over to a dog. It's their dogs that tear it up, and we're saddled with having to take care of things. The Centennial Pavilion shade, I think if there's an opportunity for that T-Mobile grant, that we should pursue that as well, and I think that's a given. But there are some things here that seem to have, I'm not quite sure the word, but it's favoritism towards specific groups or specific locations, so.
Well, at the same time, that's what we do for everything we do. Basketball courts, tennis courts, baseball fields, soccer fields, playgrounds, splash pads. Everything is for specific groups. What we try and do is hit all the groups. And that's the difficult thing is we want all of our facilities to be great for all people that are in the town. And so to do that, we have to hit all the groups. And we try and multi-purpose as many things as we can. But anything that's community services oriented is geared towards specific people within the community. And the idea is for us to hit as many people as we can every time we can.
And excuse me, Councilman Skillicorn, I know you're next, but I just want to throw in, I think there's opportunity there for sales tax revenue from people that visit the town and they rent out that shade structure behind those businesses there. So every time they wine and dine in town, we're a beneficiary of that as well. Councilman Skillicorn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One quick question on that Desert Vista pump enclosure. It sounds awfully expensive to me. I mean, even if it was a complete enclosure with a new panel, I'm like, that's probably less than what I see that number there. But I also do wonder why that one is so much more than the one over at Four Peaks.
It has to do with that electrical panel that's on the plywood and having to get engineering involved to move those versus the other ones are already there. We're going to build a building around those. And so that makes it a lot easier and a lot cheaper.
Because coming from that industry, that sounds like an awfully expensive.
I hope it is.
Yeah.
I hope it's far less.
Okay.
And like I said, I
So
talked to you
I am
last year when we did
skeptical, yeah.
Panorama, and you said, I hope you come in under.
Yeah.
We're coming in 100 grand under of our 250 grand.
Okay.
So we'll do that, but I need to have the money there to figure out what it takes to move that stuff, because that is going to have to be moved, not just built around and put in. So that's why.
And I don't know if it's really appropriate for a CIP or budget discussion, but I kind of wonder, even like a block grant to the dog park, the A-Dog. I know that we can use staff resources and such, but I kind of wonder, like, here's a $50,000 budget. How do you guys want to spend it? And then we kind of hands off, and it lets them have the freedom. Now, if they need to use some of our resources, that's fine. But I kind of wonder, maybe just looking at it that way.
Yeah, to me, I'd much rather have the knowledge that our staff carried, that know what works and what doesn't. I've heard the ideas that have come from there, and I've turned down a lot of those ideas, even if they were from professionals. That it doesn't always line up, and so when you do that, then we're ultimately responsible, even if they go in and do something that shouldn't have been done. So that's my opinion on it. Anything else?
All right, on that note, as opposed to going to each one, I guess there's a question as to, are there any that anyone would like to see removed completely, red lighted, pulled from this list? Are there any that you would like to be yellow lighted and come back in that we will budget for them? Okay. So I'm seeing everyone that we are going to give the green light. Oh, I see.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The only yellow that I want to provide are for the splash pad. And I think that's actually it. My only note on Centennial Pavilion is I want to do it if we get the grant. So that's a greenish yellow light.
And I similarly have a yellow light on Centennial Plaza Pavilion lighting, contingent on the grant. And the dog park to me is still too specific in its use as opposed to, and I don't know whether, do we get liability releases from those people that use the dog park?
That's the way parks are in general.
Okay.
Is when you enter a free public park, and you can.
So they
correct me
break
on
their
that.
leg and it's their problem?
Yeah.
And again, with the park splash pad for the lighting, that's a yellow for me. And I think that's it right now. Thanks.
All right, so I have 2 yellows, and I have 5 that are okay with moving forward with everything. Okay. All right, noted. Any other questions for Kevin?
Thank you.
I want to thank you,
Wait.
Kevin, for the beautiful green grass at the fountain park.
You thought you were done, but you're not.
I just saw I have one more slide. It's your fault. So this is our 5-year look of things that we want to start keeping an eye on. One, you'll notice that has large numbers that I hope continues to move as it has over the last few years for the lake liner. But we want to make everyone aware that we are very conscious of that and are paying attention to it. So this is kind of our plan to start getting some funding in for that. And the other long-term one that you see on there is the Golden Eagle Park, and it is our next park that is in need of multi-year improvements, kind of like we're doing right now on the Avenue, like we did at Four Peaks and Desert Vista. Any questions on those?
Thanks, Kevin, I appreciate it. Is there any way with the lake liner, I mean, that's not going to be a major expense, but it's pretty important. Is there any way we could try and put at least $1 million a year in that fund? And maybe, oh, here he comes.
It's a really relevant question, Councilwoman McMahon. So the town manager and I have talked about that a little bit recently. We're you know, I've been here over a year now. We're starting to look at our policies and what we can bring back to council to consider as for our financial policies. That's one of the things we've talked about, requiring certain revenues to automatically go into our facilities reserve fund that we use for facility improvements as well as saving for the lake liner. But definitely that's a priority for staff. This year's challenging because like I've been reporting to the council, our revenues are flattening. So it's a stark difference from even last year where we had a lot of reserves. So we have to kind of see how the rest of the year goes out. Right now, just a rough projection, we're projecting like 4 to 5 million of excess reserves at year end, but if things change, that can change quickly. So we actually don't have a really good idea of that number until June, July. And really, once the audit's done is when we can start having those conversations, which is closer to October. But we can certainly budget for what we think is a reasonable amount in the final adopted budget of a transfer from the general fund for that purpose. So stay tuned, but definitely something we're considering. I think it's just important to note, actually, Kevin and Rachel and I talked about that a little bit more. You know, it's something we'd like to not have to do for a long time, but I think it's just prudent for us to start planning for it. We've already started saving for it. And fiscal year 28 seemed like a good time to at least start getting the ball rolling, to have a plan and starting to formulate. So that's why we have it there. We're hoping it doesn't come to that. We're hoping we still feel good and we can push things back a little bit more, but it's important to plan, so that's why it's there. So.
And just to add to that, it's something that I am pushing for. I plan on being here for a long time, but just in case I'm not, I've done a lot of the research along with our engineering firms and things that we've worked with. So if I were to not be here and they were to start this project of figuring out how we can actually do the lake liner replacement, I think it would be a disservice to the town. And so that's one of the reasons that I'd like to get us for lack of a better term, a 3-ring binder together that says, we've planned it, it's now leaking, take this book and go do it. And I think that's the most important part of this is not going, oh no, the sky's falling, in this case the lake's leaking, and so we need to get moving ASAP, and now we're 2 years down the road getting the plan together to how to do it, and then another year to get it done. I'd much rather have us be ahead of that and go, regardless, if it's leaking, we have to drain it, we have to put in a new liner, and how do we do it? So to me, it doesn't make, we won't gain anything by waiting longer to do it unless something magically comes along that sucks the water out and makes it evaporate immediately, and then you can just put it in the lake liner. We don't have to haul 100 million gallons of water out. But I don't think that's coming anytime soon. So to me, I think it would be smart for us to get moving on that sooner than later.
And we've talked a lot about that, Rachel, you and I have. This council is very serious about planning for that event and also saving money toward it. We don't want to ever be in the position of going to the residents of this town saying we have not planned for this event, so.
I'm sorry, Councilmember, I was just going to chime in on the same topic. It doesn't mean that we aren't monitoring it, though. We still do the dive inspections every couple of years. We do the evap tests with things like that to make sure that we are monitoring the health of the lake and the liner, and we don't have any indicators that it is leaking, but we know in FY30 that is the lifespan of the expected lifespan of the current liner. So to Kevin's point, we'll continue to monitor it. It doesn't mean we actually have to start the work in FY 29 or 30, but getting a plan in place, ready to go, so that when we do have to get the work done, it's ready to roll and we can get moving.
Maybe I misunderstood. What year was the lake liner installed?
The lake liner was installed in 2000, 2001.
Okay, so I thought it had a 20-year life.
It had a 20-year warranty and has a 30-year life.
30-year life, okay,
Yes.
That's good to know. Has anybody started conversations with the sanitary district about their participation?
They're aware.
And how anxious are they to participate?
They're aware of it. It probably warrants, as we move along, having a joint session with them and their board. But from operation to operation, yes, they're aware and that we have been talking about it, and we'll have to include them in the planning process because it affects them greatly, just as much as us. So they're aware, but there's definitely more conversation to be had.
I don't want to spend lots of time on the lake liner, because it's years off. We don't need to spend a year talking about it. But is there any legal liability if it's leaking some? I mean, we could just become the Garden of Eden if it leaks a little bit. But I don't know if there's legal liability for, or if it's our legal liability. It might be the sanitary district's legal liability, because I believe some of that is not allowed to turn back in the groundwater. But I am also curious what we would do with it temporarily. I mean, do we have a plan to store that water, or is that just we're hoping that someone gives us, a giant retention pond for that time?
Yeah, so my understanding is last time when it got replaced, there was legal ramifications for not doing it. Once they found it was leaking, then it was discovered that they were finding it in the ground, in the soils on Sovereign Nation, and that's what prompted we got to do it now. So that's my understanding of it. You want to stand up again?
All right, this time I think you're done. I think you're actually done this time.
Want to get your check? Thank you.
All right, Director Weldy's going to walk us through the Public Works projects. I figure we'll take a similar approach, ask questions, familiarize yourselves with the projects, and then we'll take a look at them collectively at the end.
Thank you.
Director.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, council members, first of all, thank you for the lunch. We do appreciate the fact that you fed us on this day. As we go through this, and the next few words and statements are not intended to discount anybody's wants or needs, but in Public Works, everything that we have on this list is a need. We just don't have any wants because our focus is on safety. And that envelope is relatively large because of all the different types of transportation needs and drainage and other safety issues we relate to. There is a caveat to that. Palomino is a direct select that is changed to a CIP by the mayor and council. We will follow the direction and the instruction provided by the mayor and council on that road as we discuss it. The balance of the projects in here are vetted and discussed over a considerable amount of time, and we consider a need. Any questions on the opening statement? The first one is Palomino. We've had a considerable amount of discussion related to this roadway. In fact, the town engineer and myself and the assistant town engineer have all been out to this location numerous times to take a look and see what we have, as it has become clear to us that the council intends to move forward and follow through with their commitment to build this road. I think it's important to note, with a project of this magnitude and complexities related to it, there is a lot of moving parts here that have to be addressed. One of those is we have one whole half of the road, and these are the lovely folks living on the south side of the road that are historically up on a hill overlooking. A large percentage of the ones on the north side are below grade. When the town comes in and does work in this type of terrain with this type of geometry, during the next storm event, it is likely there will be water overtopping curbs and entering driveways. At that time, and justifiably so, the residents become angry. Whether or not past rain events caused flooding or water to flow through their property is no longer relevant. What becomes relevant is the work that was recently done and how that may or may not have impacted the quantities of water that overtopped curbs or entered driveways. The reason I'm talking about this a little bit more detail is we had originally proposed pulling the curbs in 5 feet on either side to prepare for the eventual placement of sidewalk when and if funding becomes available. We have since changed our direction on that. Based on the geometry and the road prism in this area, it's a must that we pull these curbs in for several reasons. One of them, we need to take control of some of these flows of water, the majority of them heading east from just east of Palisades. This includes all the surface water from the roadway and a good percentage of the hillside water for all the homes on the south side and a couple of the tributary side roads that have steep slopes that lead down into it. The second reason is up against the steep slopes and even some of the flatter slopes. We have an incredible amount of mature landscaping that is in several different types, including larger river rock, smaller rock, but matures trees, plants, and shrubs. When we go in to remove the existing width of the road, we are going to have to dig into some of this landscaping, in some cases about 2 feet or so. And this is going to drive the cost of construction substantially higher. Having said that, and I was asked this question most recently, can we just redo the road without addressing the curbs? The answer is no. The curb that is in there for the majority is a pre-incorporation curb that is approximately 4 to 6 inches thick and sits on top of the pavement. A structural curb section is about 18 inches thick and actually holds the pavement in place. Two different types of structures. With that said, I will let you know the steps that we've taken as we've worked with the town manager. The first step is we have developed a clear scope of work that will be published and released to our on-call engineering firms for survey services. Surveying of this length of road is an absolute necessity. Then we have that datum, and that allows us to be able to determine when and where we may or may not need to change the elevation of the road to allow waters to flow one direction or the other. It's also critical that we have that survey so we can determine the offset, the lateral, and the horizontal location for every single foot of the curb that needs to be replaced. The original estimate for this is about $5.4 million. For today's purpose, we have no reason to increase or decrease that amount because it's based on conversations we've had with more than 2 professionals in this business that are familiar with this type of work and provide pretty good estimates based on unit pricing. Lots of information there. We'll pause here briefly and take any questions or try to address any concerns you may have.
I just want to mention that I've been out on this road with the Public Works Director. I think a couple of times we've been out there now. So I've seen firsthand what he's talking about. And there's what, 130 driveways on this street?
132, Mayor.
Okay. So there's a lot to take into consideration. So I appreciate your due diligence on this.
Thank you.
So Director Welty, the existing curbs, are they a poured-in-place curb, or are they just
Councilmember, they are cast in place.
cast in place?
Yes, it was the equivalent of a 1970 slip form.
Gotcha. So I'm surprised that there's no increase in cost to do a formed that's 18 inches as opposed to that 6 inches. You comfortable with that number?
The estimate that we provided to the mayor and council is to replace it with roll curb, not the wedge curb. So our 5.4 includes a new curb, because as part of the planning, we knew the curbing would have to be replaced. The cost to replace wedge curb is slightly lower, but we don't replace it in kind. The town engineer sealed a document that is the same outside shapes. However, it is at a structural depth and about a foot deep for the wedge curb if and when we replace it in shorter sections.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, let's look at the pictures. I got focused on talking. So, and here are some of the roadway conditions that we had discussed earlier. This is what we're proposing for the finished product. And now we'll move on to Golden Eagle Impound. It's important to note that the monies that we are asking for next year are partially to cover any unpaid invoices for this year, ends in June 30th, but primarily for next year, which is phase 2, which includes some work on the face of the dam, the drainage channel in front of it, and the trash racks and or the structures that prevent large debris from entering the dam. It's important to note, and the town manager and I have had this conversation, when we applied for this grant 5 years ago, the estimate for this work was the approximate $90,000 that you're seeing. We will know more about that number when we go to bid, when those plans are finished. It's also important to note that the ADWR and the Maricopa County Flood Control District have had the plans for phase 2 at 60% design for the last 6 months, and we've not yet heard any comment back from them, not uncommon. Likely it'll be 12 to 18 months. So we're in the design, planning, and construction stage for phase 2 of next year, and we will share more information about that phase when we return to Mayor and Council to codify and or revise the grant from the Flood Control District, which is a 75-25% split, I think this one is. Any questions related to the asking of money to finish this year and start phase 2?
Councilwoman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I turned my light on a minute or two ago because I'd like to talk about Palomino. And I hit right at the end of it, and I didn't know we were going to Golden Eagle. So if you can go back. My question here is, I thought originally this was going to be just a CIP-funded project. And then now it's going to be reimbursed by the streets fund. And so this might be a Paul question, but you know, what effect is this going to have to encumber our streets fund in outlying years?
Councilwoman, so because of what we've discussed with the expenditure limitation and us saving of HERF funds and our investment earnings in that fund, those are exclusionary against the expenditure limitation. So number one, HERF, that's one of the exclusions. When you spend that money, it doesn't count. It's one of the biggest ones that we have typically every year. Grants and investment earnings, other things like bond proceeds and things like that don't count as well. So in one of the presentations, we discussed how we've been saving up our HERF funds in the streets fund. So yes, we have a fund balance, but a lot of that in our fund balance now is about I'm thinking of the numbers right now. We have about 14 million by the year end. We'll have about 11 million. Let's look at our $14 million today that we have in the streets fund. About 7 million of that is either HERF money or investment earnings. About 6 million of that is HERF money. So basically, this is the approach that we decided to take to allow us to be able to increase our budget, because we have those carry forwards that don't count towards the expenditure limitation. So it's a very complicated answer, but basically we have to do it this way to be able to increase our budget so much this year to be able to take on this additional project. Because last year, fiscal year 25 that we're in now, we adopted a budget of 45.2 million. This year's budget is going to be right around 51 million. And our expenditure limitation only went up by $1 million. So you see, we're kind of increasing our budget to take on an additional large project like this, but we're able to do that because of that strategy. That doesn't mean we're going to use all of those HERF monies in those transfers. We could be transferring over some of our local sales taxes. We're only transferring over whatever we need to be able to get under the expenditure limitation. So that's what I tried to explain at the last time, at whichever meeting it was that we discussed this process. But that's a specific strategy that finance has entailed, and we work with it alongside the town manager and the public works director to be able to increase our capital budget to this extent, to be able to do a large-scale project like this.
So you're saying this is going to come out of previously collected funds from HERF and sales tax, or is this going to affect HERF funds going forward, and how many years would we be encumbering those sources of revenue that would be put into other streets being repaired other than Palomino?
Yes, so all the money that's in the streets fund now is made up of those monies. As we work on this project next year, there's a lot of variables with this project, so let me make that clear. It might not be 5.4 million next year. It might take 2 years. It might take 3 years, depending on how long the project goes. But
3 years of borrowing funds to fund this?
Not necessarily borrowing funds, really.
Okay, I'm just trying to follow them.
Right, it's the way we do things here. If we pay for it out of the capital projects fund up front, we can include it in our capital improvement plan and track it that way easier. It would be easier really if we were just paying for it out of the streets fund, but that's just how we do it. It's just being reimbursed through a transfer every time we're making a payment. So say we're paying the vendor for some of the construction work, we're just paying it out of the capital projects fund and doing a reimbursement to transfer the funds.
And so future funds we collect will be going to future projects for the roads?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
It'll go into the streets fund and fund the normal street paving program, as well as other other programs that are coming out of the streets fund. Like
We're not taking future dollars to do this. It's coming out of what we have right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're not encumbering any future road work by doing this.
That was precisely my question. Thank you.
Okay.
So Paul, before you run away, so what we've done is we've found a way to exceed the 42 million that we had last year, plus the $1 million we've got this year, 43. We found a way to be able to accelerate that to $50 million. But the expectation is that it's a one-time event. It's going to go back to the $43 million, whatever the state thresholds are, going forward. Is that fair?
It's mostly fair. We have to evaluate year to year, council member, so it just depends. Like this year, we're going to have to evaluate how much of our exclusions and our carry forward we'll have to use. This year, I don't anticipate we'll use a lot, but next year we will. So when you look at our expenditure limitation report after it's complete, after you get next year's operations, we're going to come in $1 under the expenditure limitation because we're just going to use the exclusions that we need to be able to do that. And all of this discussion is part of that strategy, yes, to be able to increase our budget to take on an additional project that we may not have been able to otherwise fit under the expenditure limitation.
But especially considering revenue streams going forward in upcoming years, they may be significantly lower. So I would hate the expectation to be that all of a sudden we went from 43 to 51, and now we're going to stay at 51 because I think the reality is probably we're going to be back down to that 43, if not less.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's highly likely that if we are, hypothetically, if we're able to finish Palomino, and it does cost about $5 million to do next year, hypothetically, we probably will reduce our budget the following year below that 51 million that we're including in the proposed budget at this point. It's very likely.
Thank you.
Councilman, to that point, just to kind of, I think, close the loop, is that the exclusions that we're using are one time, in that you use them, you don't get to use them again. So we're using them we're expending $5 million worth of them on this project to get it done, and then we will revert back to our standard rate, our standard maximum.
We were discussing the Golden Eagle impoundment. Any questions or concerns related to this project before we move on?
Is the contingency fund last year's change orders or unforeseen challenges that you ran into?
Councilmember, it's just planning. Currently, we are within budget, and I don't anticipate any challenges, but we need the ability to pay in next year after substantial completion is reached.
So we're just protecting from what we can't see, unknowns at this point?
Correct.
Okay.
This is a multi-year project. If you've had an opportunity to get out to see the ones previously approved by the council in the downtown area, some of them are currently being marked, the ones that do not cross Saguaro. The ones on Saguaro will be marked as soon as we get out there and do the sealer on Saguaro when the $4 million project is finished. These are the locations based on feedback we have heard from the mayor and council, the town manager, and the residents of the next locations where they would like to see this. Any questions related to the marked crosswalks or comments related to the ones that were finished in this year?
Can we put fencing to prohibit pedestrians from crossing in other than the crosswalks? They're all over the place.
Under the direction of the majority, we can visit any option, sir.
Nice answer. Thank you.
This is, again, another multi-year project. Please note for this year, the work will be primarily on McDowell Mountain Road at milepost 2. The Maricopa County Department of Transportation is doing a complete reconstruct and adding shoulders to McDowell Mountain Road from milepost 2 to Forest Road. Later on this calendar year, our intent is to take an opportunity and redo our guardrail and bring it up to AASHTO standards in that location at this time. The primary reason, in anticipation of us not meeting that code, the county has designed a section of guardrail that actually goes down and meets ours. Any questions related to this multi-year? This is the Shea Boulevard widening project. This is the section between Palisades and Fountain Hills Boulevard. We have discussed this over the last several years. In this particular case, we are anticipating to come to council prior to the summer break and asking them to award a bid to start construction on this project. There are a lot of different funding factors involved here, including but not limited to the state shared portion, the development fees we've collected, and a smaller portion from CIP. Any questions related to this one? The community center renovations. This is a placeholder for next year, simply because we are going to be returning to the council here very, very shortly with a contract amendment for Atlanta Buick and Beers for them to start design on the roof, not only for this building, but the other 3 buildings. But we also have some ongoing work in the community center related to badly needed improvements. And so we want to make sure that we have adequate funding in there next year to cover those improvements. Awfully quiet. Any questions related to this one? As I just discussed on the last slide, you got a presentation most recently from Atlanta Buick and Beers related to the Town Hall campus building roofs. I think it's important to note that we referenced the 3 large primary roofs: Town Hall, Community Center, Library, Museum. There is a fourth building that we don't talk about as much, and that is the physical plant. That is the one that houses our HVAC system and/or our chiller systems and the mechanical that operates the town hall campus. It will also be included. Like I said, we will be in front of council very, very shortly asking for an amendment to their contract to start the design to repair the roofs for all four of those buildings. Any questions related to this one?
I have just one. I know this is for the design. Do you have any estimated ballpark on what the actual repairs are going to cost?
Mr. Mayor, council member, we do not have an engineer's estimate at this time. There is an incredible amount of work in front of us, but as part of that design, when we come back to council, at most likely around the 90%, we will have some concepts and a little bit clearer scope of what is necessary and the engineer's estimates at that time. It's important to note, and I don't want to frighten anyone sitting up there right now, most recently there was a comparison done of projects that were estimated and the actual bid, and the lion's share of them for state contracts were 100% over the engineer's estimate. So when we prepare an engineer's estimate, it's based on that individual's opinion and their expertise in that at the time. It could be a little bit a year or two later before we come to a reality. So I just want to prepare everybody for that. An engineer's estimate is just that. The true number is in the bid that we would ask the council to award.
And so when do you anticipate the design will be finished and we'll go on to that engineering report?
We anticipate that the design will take most of next fiscal year to ensure that we have everything adequately covered. And there's a considerable amount of time included in the process. Because it is our building, we treat ourselves as though we would treat anybody else, and the architect and/or engineers will be required to submit that through the top system for review. And that takes time because there are several departments, and most of them either included or sitting in this room or will be soon, are going to be doing that review process and then obviously the eventual permitting of that. So because of all of that, it takes a little longer, and we may want to get some additional facts and/or information from professionals that are typically involved in the actual work as part of the design.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions
Director
related to this one?
Director Welty, going back to the community center, I understand you don't have hard numbers at this point, but do you have a percentage? You said there were some repairs and the roof. Is it 90-10, 75-25? Can you give me some guesstimation?
And let me do some corrections. So we're asking for the roof separately. The $300,000 that we're asking for here is a placeholder for not only the fans that are in this year in anticipation that we may not be able to complete them before the end of the year, but also the very large doors that divide up all of the ballrooms. There is a considerable amount of work underway right now to determine whether or not the structure is suitable for the newer, more modern, slightly heavier in some cases that are auto, slightly lighter in some cases for the manual. So we're looking at our options there, and this is a placeholder to ensure that we can accomplish those goals.
So I misunderstood. It has nothing to do with roofing then?
You're correct. I'm the one that made a mistake, sir.
Well, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Thank you.
This is the multi-year sidewalk infill program. Just as a reminder, this does not include the sidewalk that was constructed as part of the federal funding grant for Saguaro and Palisades, which I will briefly note is in the wind down stages, and they're just about finished. All the traffic control will be picked up. The last few things will be private property issues that will be dealt with. Now, moving on to this one. We've discussed this numerous times. For this year, we are going to be constructing the sidewalk in front of Bashes from Palisades to just south of Bashes. We're going to get started on that in June, and then we're going to finish it in next fiscal year because of a project of that size And to minimize the impacts to the driveways and access to the businesses, we're going to split that up over some time, and we're going to utilize some of this year's money that we saved to get that started. And I should also note that as part of the amendment that the council approved to the active transportation plan, and we need to get that posted, we identified the 5-year horizon. So in about 2 more years, or as part of planning for next year's budget for the 27 year, we will likely come back and do an additional amendment or ask the council for some direction on where they would like to go on the 5-year horizon for the active transportation plan. Any questions related to sidewalks?
Yeah, Rick, I think you were first. Oh, okay. Yeah, I do, Justin. I've been on record to say that I think the sidewalks are very expensive and you don't get a lot of bang for your buck. We typically get grant funding, and that's why there's so many sidewalks around Fountain Hills right now being worked on, because primarily it all came out of grant funding. I really hate to pay for sidewalks out of capital improvements. Is there any chance that this project can go to a grant funding and come back later?
Mr. Mayor, council member, the grant process is a little bit more challenging in that. So the grant that you are currently referencing for the $4 million, that process started almost 6 years ago. So when you apply for a federal grant, and some of our federal grant applications are going to be a little bit more challenging going forward, because one of the questions in there are going to be, have you completed your master transportation plan? So there's going to be a series of questions that will make it less likely that we're going to be able to get those larger grants from the federal government unless they change their policies. With that said, grants are historically released every 2 years. Currently, we did not meet that criteria, but we did get a closeout funding design assistance, which will only help us up to 15% of the design or design concept report. Can we apply for grants for sidewalk gap elimination? Absolutely. When one comes available, will we ask the mayor and council for guidance on it? Absolutely. In the interim, we would like to be able to continue the path that we've taken. It's relatively affordable by the unit prices, and we've made a pretty good progress over the last several years. And I would be hard pressed to identify a street, gated or not, in this community where I've not seen people walking amongst themselves with younger children or their favorite pet. So it's clearly sidewalks are needed for those that walk in the streets.
In our current grant-funded sidewalk infill program, how many feet, yards, miles have we completed, and how many will we complete at the closure of that project?
Approximately just under 5,000 linear feet.
Okay. And so for 6061 here, for this amount of money, how many feet would this provide?
I don't have that in front of me. I know that to do in front of Bashes is about $200,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have that measurement. So we measuring it by the linear foot or square foot is a little bit challenging, because rarely can we just put sidewalk on flat ground. It requires us to either pull the curbs in or
Right.
cut into slopes and build walls.
Yeah, I've noticed. Thank you.
Any additional questions related to walkable surfaces? This, again, is a multi-year project that has aided the town staff in updating or making necessary corrections to the aging infrastructure. This year, we're still looking at 2 different projects, a little bit delayed on it, while we were determining whether or not we were going to be eligible for a grant on a project that we're doing at Courtside Villas. Any questions related to this? This is a new project that is going to become a multi-year project. We have a large number of dams that we are responsible for managing, maintaining within the town limits. Over the years, because of limited funding that was provided across the board for all the departments and divisions, dams were kind of set aside. I'll use Golden Eagle Dam as an extreme. That funding was primarily used, the limited funding, for other things to meet the needs and the necessities of the community. We now know the end result of that is all the sediment there and all of the brush and the growth in the washes resulted in a staggering amount of damage from backwatering and outflow. As we've been inspecting the dams, the town engineer and I have decided there is an incredible amount of sediment. And this picture that you see really doesn't do any justice. But that structure you see there in the center right of this photo is the inlet that allows water to go through the dam. And while it appears as though you may be looking down into a grate, in fact, that structure is intended to have water flow through it, not into it. And so as you can see, the sediment at this location is probably 8 feet above the inlet. And the channel that you can see, and I know there's a pointer right here, let me do a little bit better job of. There it is. Let's go back. This channel right here, nature has cut with water flows. In this area here, this nature cut channel is about 6 or 8 feet deep where it enters here. But up here it gets shallower. But this area is the entire wash, and historically that water would come down through here and enter into this inlet. But as you can see, the sediment has sat so long that it's actually grown a semi-forest. Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
So explain, if you will, your reuse of that soil and that sediment, because I think it saved the town a lot of money in certain areas. You and I were out looking at a wash recently where they were repurposing some of this sediment. Is that true?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. For the suitable materials that are removed from our washes or any local town project, be it Fountain Park or any other park, and in some cases for development, we allow them to place that material in locations along Shea for many, many years, which reduces the overall cost of building roadways. And also, we are currently working on a slope stabilization project in Ashbrook Wash between Hampstead and Fountain Hills Boulevard, where the materials have been donated, placed, and graded by local contractors and/or contractors working for the town of Fountain Hills. For those of you that have not had an opportunity, Ashbrook Wash in this section is just north of Palisades. You can enter on Fountain Hills Boulevard or Hampstead. There is a gate there that blocks vehicles. However, there is a pedestrian gate that allows any Fountain Hills resident, and in this case a gentleman and his child, they ride their bicycle through there or walk nearly every afternoon. We encourage you to take a look at that. The eventual goal at this time is, once we've received as much of the free material and its place as possible, to apply for a grant with the Maricopa County Flood Control District to then wrap those slopes in wire and stabilize them for future, or to minimize or reduce lateral migration in those areas. One question, 10 minutes of talking. Anything else related to the sediment removal? Awfully quiet. Now, this is a project with an incredible amount of discussion as of recent. We have a couple of experts in the audience, staff, that are willing to address some of the most recent comments. Ma'am, would you like to join us?
Mayor, Council, good afternoon. So to provide a little bit of background, although I feel like we've been talking about this for 2 years, but again, if there's somebody new in the audience or new watching from home, So since 2009, the town has had some form of downtown strategy, with the focus being on the Avenue of the Fountains. A couple of years ago, we, after 10 years, updated our community economic development strategy. And as part of our business attraction focus area, the community wanted to see us update the downtown strategy. So we did that last year. We had 6 meetings with focus groups. We had 4 electronic surveys and an open house, which then has led us to implementing, which we're showing option 1, the path moving forward of the streetscapes, and then beginning with design of east half of the avenue. So this is again based off of an almost year-long process. We met in December and felt like we were getting a positive reaction from council. We had a meeting in February, still seeing some positive results. And then we were asked, so Councilmember Calavianakis checked in with a couple of our newer council members to say, are we good with this? It's going to cost over $10 million. And then Councilmember Watts asked for another public meeting, and our town manager Goodwin said, let's try to get her done, which was a task, but we got it done before this meeting. So we had a meeting last week. There were lots of new faces, I'll say lots of new residents, a handful of businesses. What came out of it is there's still support for the downtown. I think there's always that question of where do we start? Do we continue and we finish, air quotes, the avenue, or do we move to Verde River and Parkview? I'll remind most of this council, we attempted this 2 years ago around March. I see Vice Mayor smiling over there. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a consensus from council of where to start. So we ended up for 2 years, if we think about it, did nothing, which is unfortunate to improve our downtown. But acknowledging too that staff decided to take a step back, and we decided to remove it from council consideration and said, let's go ahead and do this almost 1-year process, which again was last year. So feedback we received was, let's start with Verde River, then Parkview, which is now showing this option. I will share with you, so again, majority of you were there last week, and I feel like it's all of our jobs, but a heavy lift on staff is to identify where was some of the feedback, and was it in emotion or fear? And so I did follow up with a couple of the businesses and let them know what staff heard, and a couple of council members where we had to have a conversation was, we don't want an entertainment district. We want office, which traditionally office closes at 5 p.m. And sometimes we're labeled as a sleepy town. This is what we're hearing. We don't want to have a reaction, so I'm checking in. We don't want to meet that reaction with another reaction. Is this what I heard? Now I know, because I've been doing this for 3 years, they're like, that's absolutely not what we're saying. And so I'm like, that's what was heard. So you all need to quickly get together and have a statement made. And we need to understand, right, there's residents, there's businesses, so we're looking at doing something for the betterment of Fountain Hills, regardless of the downtown boundary. And then we also have the stakeholder group, the Avenue Merchant Association, which is referred to as TAMA. The mayor was present back in November when he was wearing his council member hat when we had a meeting, and they said, we love it, thank you so much for coming to us. There are some people that have changed their mind as staff, and I think to deliver to council, we have a right to change our mind. But is that a representation of TAMA, or is it as an individual business owner? So again, a lot to consider here. Which is also to the point why I recommend we keep the avenue at least as part of this until we get more information. Option 3 we're throwing out, and in talking with Paul, we could make work within the capital fund, is to attempt to do the design of Verde River and Parkview all at once. I'll tell you, I've been talking with my teammates to just make sure, can we really do this? They think so. That's not a lot of confidence. And so again, just being transparent and honest. And so if we receive some direction, so we're wanting to know which options council is currently sitting at. But I will say with option 3, I would really like the staff to sit down and really map out our procurement process, which sometimes takes a couple of months, doing public input, because again, those designs are concepts, which again, a lot of people were taking those concepts as reality. I know we have to show something, but people get so locked in. And so an example was the lighting that was shown. My dark sky friends were like, Amanda, those are not dark sky compliant. Like, you're an advocate of us. I'm like, I know, it's a concept, but do we want to spend thousands of dollars to show that it's dark sky compliant? But then what we're hoping is to have construction documents, because hearing the business community, if we're going to do this, they would like us to do it in the slower months, which would be July. So I just want to make sure we can really deliver on this. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions. And again, what we would like to hear in preparation for April and May in the tentative budget adoption, where council is leaning as far as options or any other direction.
I just wanted to go right out of the gate and say that I would lean option 2, only because with option 3, it is, one, it's more money right off the bat on this next budget. But then on top of that, I notice it doesn't really change the timeline toward the end there. So to me, I just lean toward a little bit less in 26 and then still the same for 28, 29, 30. But I mean, I guess I'm saying I'd go with either way. If majority wants option 3, I'm not going to fight about it, yeah.
And Mayor and Vice Mayor, since we're talking option 2, is there additional support before we start maybe throwing in option 1? No, I think this is good. You're kind of setting the tone. So is there support?
The order of their doing it. Thank you.
Before I do that, Councilmember, I think the mayor called on somebody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Have we in here taken out doing the expanding the sidewalks on the Avenue Park? Wait, oh my God, the main avenue, the avenue of the fountains.
So-
Thank you. I actually went, because we were talking to me about it, I'm like, I went and drove it. You're right. The only place that it's narrow is in front of Sephora, whatever. Safrida's, not Sephora. Safrida's. Why would we be expanding all those other sidewalks that are plenty wide? So I kind of think that's something, I wonder if we didn't do that part, unless this could reduce the expense of this along the way.
So Mayor, Councilmember Earl, we have kept in widening the sidewalks, and several of the businesses on the avenue and that are part of TAMA have asked me to do my best to still keep it in there. So if we're wanting to, so simultaneously we're working on an overlay district to have entertainment-like uses. So if you think of restaurants, if you think of bars, if you think of theaters and outside patios, in order to do that, so we showed Safrida's, again, people focused on that. They thought we did this because of Safrida's. No, it was an example to show if we add more of those uses, specifically along the avenue, so you don't have these same things along Verde River and Parkview, you have to expand the sidewalks. Otherwise, we're gonna repeat, I won't say what I was about to say, Safrida's.
Okay.
So you have that narrowing. And then if I'm not doing a beautiful job, I will look to our town engineer if he needs to step up. But that's why we're doing that.
So the
And
way
I'll
they have,
go ahead.
on Oka, where you can sit outside, that it was just because it was developed that way from the beginning.
Correct. It is wider and allows that. And so talking to some of the businesses On, we'll say, the Park Place side,
Yeah.
we're wanting to do a little bit of work. One, they've asked, okay, what if you continue some sections of the avenue, but you leave ours out? So we as staff need to look at that. They, again, want to do due diligence, that they're not just speaking, on themselves, that they're talking to other people in that corridor. But now they have said, they're like, okay, is that the worst? They've now sort of shifted, right? There was a little bit of that emotion, but they've shifted of, okay, we look at it that the town is trying to invest to make an enhancement.
And so is Parkview just sidewalks? Are we just doing
No.
sidewalks?
So again, back a couple
Because
of
some
months
people
ago
are
when I talked about the
saying
whole
that, yes.
enchilada, it's expanding the sidewalks, it's adding light. So again, if we try to go down Parkview at 8 o'clock at night or wanting to walk, is it very safe? I personally, as a resident and professionally, don't find it safe. It's very dark. I think go away. So it's adding lights, it's the landscaping, it's site furnishings, adding areas to sit and creating that sense of place. Right now, it's again, to be perfectly honest, and some of you have agreed with that, it's really not a sense of place. You think, what has happened here? What's happened here is it's been neglected. And we'll check in with Gian over, was there anything else you wanted to add? Or Councilmember Earl, was that good?
Because I was at that meeting and I was hearing very different things than I've heard before. Thank you.
Yes, and Councilmember, I agree. I said that. I'm like, okay, you guys are new faces, but also just peeling back with some of the businesses of, there was some emotion. And what was nice is some residents following up, and I spent 90 minutes with a business yesterday and said, sometimes I wish it could be one-on-one. And she admitted, I heard close, and as soon as I heard close, I took it as the town is closing my business, and how am I supposed to survive? And then so we were able to talk through that, and she appreciated it, and she's like, okay, if you can try to tell council not to completely remove the avenue, but again, if they want to move towards, option 2, there's support there. There's valid reasons, and again, 2 years ago, we made the attempt. Mayor, I think Councilmember McMahon? Nope, okay.
I think you're next, Alan.
So going by those options, I'm thinking 2 or 3. If 3 is doable, staff thinks that's fine with me. And I would argue against 1 because I believe timing matters. And, the other streets have simply been neglected. And I won't call them blighted, but, there's definitely that component there. Whereas the Avenue of Fountains has had a lot of attention on it and plenty of funding over the years where the others have not. So I think that the timing matters. So I'd really argue for either 2 or 3. And frankly, I still have a vision for a culinary district down there. And I believe that this gets us closer to that vision. And, let the people out there know, let, entrepreneurs know, let other, investors know in the valley that, this is an opportunity to invest in Fountain Hills Culinary District, and Fountain Hills is going to be on your side and is going to make your business viable. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the Avenue of Fountains. It can be on Verde. It can be on the other street there. So, yes.
Mr. Mayor, the council members come up with some branding in other districts for us. Okay. Yep. Here comes the Jan over.
Mayor and Council, good afternoon. So I just wanted to add one thing regarding timing that Councilmember Skillicorn had just mentioned. By deferring the avenue improvements until the final 2 years, that kind of gives us a little more of a leeway, a little more of a breathing room to really take a look and see exactly how wide we want to go with the sidewalks. We certainly want to make sure we try to have minimal impact to the the fairs, loading areas on the south side along the linear park. So that will certainly give us some leeway, breathing room.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. I've gone to every workshop I've monitored social media, I've read letters to the editor, I've engaged with so much of the public on this because it's a huge price tag. And last week when we had the work session, I counted there were 60 people there, and that's not a fair representative of 25,000 or 24,000 people. It was 60 people, and a few of them mentioned the sidewalks on Rio Verde and Parkview, but again, I don't think that's a fair sampling of what the average person wants. I think when it comes to sidewalks, I've already said not a lot of bang for the buck. I've heard everyone clamoring about fixing the roads and the streets and the roads. I haven't had anybody come up to me and say, what we need is more sidewalks in downtown. Matter of fact, I've heard just the opposite. People love the downtown. I'm there all the time. They walk their dogs, they're going up and down the avenue. I think we can have what Councilmember Skillicorn mentioned, a culinary district, without even spending $1. Maybe doing an overlay, which we don't have to spend any money on. And when we had the meeting last week, I know Bart Shea was there, and he said they tried this in Glenview, and they spent $20 million on their downtown, and it's still dead. And this has been tried in a number of towns, and I think that the people come first, the sidewalks come next, because if you don't have the traffic, then just building the sidewalks, people aren't going to walk around. If that culinary district does get built and we start getting a lot of people parking and walking, I think that's the time to do this. For the three improvements, widening the sidewalks and the avenue, I'm not for. Sidewalks at this point for Verde River and Parkview, not for. On the other hand, this project in a mini form, like maybe $1.5 million, new trees. Don't cut down the existing ones though, because people don't like that. Street lights, pedestrian lights, aesthetics. I think that'd be wonderful, and that'd be a really good first phase to see if we can get more people down there. Maybe again with the overlay district, maybe restrict, to restaurants, bars, taverns, comedy clubs, and see if we can pull those people. But in a town with 24,000 people, and Gilbert, they have the population to do it. And then they've got a ton of kitschy restaurants and bars and things. I go to downtown Gilbert, Hale Theater, then you go out for dinner. It's great, but for people, I don't think we're going to get thousands of people driving to Fountain Hills because, we prettied up our downtown area. So, I'd be for this and a mini version to be expanded in future years. At least that's just my take.
Mayor, Councilmember Kalianakis, thank you for that. I think the vision is what was really driving the widening of the sidewalks. Thinking about if we had something like Safrita's all up and down the avenue, that was what was kind of driving that. And even if it's not patio dining, it could be garment racks for the clothiers or things of that nature. Just having people gathering outside in an area that that doesn't that won't be intrusive to the passersby. So that was what was really driving that. So by deferring that, that'll give us a little bit more leeway to take a look and see what we really, I guess, what we end up doing there. Yeah.
I wanted to kind of add to that, like, culinary district vision, because I do love that. Building that sense of place is a part of allowing that to occur. So just telling people, oh, this is a culinary district and not making any changes, there's not an incentive, there's not that vision of, oh yeah, people will want to come and hang out and stay and eat and then go try the ice cream shop next door. This building a sense of place is important in the if you build it, they will come kind of attitude, but you can see examples of this. If you go to Phoenix, there's obviously downtown Phoenix and all the restaurants there, but there's little pockets throughout Phoenix that are like, I don't know, the apartment building next door made a really cute area, or I'm trying to think of the restaurant name and it's not coming to me at the moment, but there's little pockets in Phoenix where the place was built And you could see that, oh, there's a restaurant opening over here. Oh, people come and hang out in this area that as you're driving through it, it's like, I mean, Phoenix is kind of extreme because you'll be going through and it's like industrial area. And then you're like, oh, this is such a cute little park, you know? What I'm trying to get at, though, is that building that sense of place does work. It does matter. I mean, you can see it in other cities and towns as well. If you look at Gilbert, you'll notice they have really wide sidewalks. Scottsdale's the same way. I can understand the argument of the restaurant came first and then the sidewalk, but that's actually not true. In a lot of cases, it's that the city built an area that, or the city or a developer built an area that these restaurants moved into, and that's why people are there.
Mr. Mayor, so again, I've heard, I'm thinking from the Vice Mayor, Councilmember Skillicorn, Councilmember Earl, I believe option 2. Councilmember Skillicorn said if we could do option 3, again, want to do a little bit more due diligence, and then Councilmember Watts needs you to weigh in.
Patience. So I think it's a great plan if it had been the original plan of the developers, of the town. I think we've developed our own somewhat eclectic Avenue of the Fountains, and I think it's kind of quaint. I do think that Verde and Parkview need some attention, but I'm in favor of leaving the Avenue of the Fountain itself alone, seeing what benefit we get from the improvements that Parks and Rec has recommended, the shade structure, the replacement of trees, and that kind of, see what the bang for the buck is that you get there before tackling something as grand as the Avenue of the Fountain. And I still am very concerned about listening to some of the businesses. I really don't think they're prepared for the impact on their businesses, so I'd really like to kind of put my toe in the water with the two adjacent streets as opposed to jumping into the water with the Avenue of the Fountain.
And so Councilmember Watts, would that be option 2 or
I don't think it's
3?
either.
Do we have them?
I'd stay with 2 because 2 addresses Parkview and Verde first without tackling the Avenue. And I think you can see if you're getting a return, if it actually improves anything or not.
Sure. I think 3, well, so the difference being that option 2 puts Verde River at design only. And then we would construct Verde River and begin the design of Parkview. Option 3 designs them both next year.
Potentially.
How's the money for that, Paul? I'm sorry, Director
Sildinger.
I think we could make it work. We are planning to have, we were originally planning to have a larger contingency this year because we have so many projects. We were going to put about $1 million in the contingency in the capital projects fund. So basically what I was thinking is we could reduce that by $300,000 and add it to this budget instead. So again, it's all stipulated by the fact that we still need to do our final expenditure limitation analysis, but I think it is doable from a budgetary standpoint.
I would go for 3 if that's feasible.
Mayor, Council, and Manager Goodwin, I want, again, I'm hearing a consensus on 2 and 3, a stronger one with option 2, but with option 3, I want us to immediately, as staff, sit down and really map out our process. Again, we have procurement policies. That doesn't take a week or 2. We have to put things out publicly. Again, the design, there's more public input because again, hearing from the business community, they're wanting us to do it during the slower time if we can. So I just want to make sure, are we really going to have the documents to pull the trigger by July 1 of next year? So just again, as staff was having conversations, and again, the meeting that happened last week was Wednesday night, and we had a couple days to pull this together. And then Mayor, just to add, again, council is giving us direction on fiscal year 26, obviously. It's showing the outer years, but again, want to do a little bit more outreach to TAMA and the businesses on the avenue before we come back and say, let's pull it completely or taking away certain halves. Because again, it was a real nice sit down yesterday with one of the businesses.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks, Terry. I just want to just once again just recommit to my problem I have with this process. You know, it's we can get a Corvette, a Ferrari, a Porsche. Take your pick. You know, how about the bus? How about a Ford Maverick? You know, but again, Bart Shea is a major developer. You know, he never even heard of this project, and he had serious concerns about this project, and as well as I do. This is a lot of money, and this council's being told, well, you're going to spend the money. It's just which years are the out years and what's coming first. You know, I just didn't. I haven't seen the groundswell of support for this in our community. Matter of fact, I've seen a lot of people that question this council approving this, and saying, well, why would you do that? There's other priorities. This is a heck of a lot of money that's going to be just located in one section of our town, hoping that, you know, we'll be a cool town someday. You know, I agree with Councilmember Watt and his concerns for 5 years worth of construction and hurting the very businesses we're trying to help. And so I'm concerned about this process that, you know, you're going to do one of them. Pick your poison. I don't know why it's got to be like that.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Calavianakis, I apologize if it's coming that way, but we've been taking a staff direction from council, and I feel like I'm seeing some heads nodding, that you've given us the direction. So these are the options, and then I'll always state here, there's an option like 2 years ago to do nothing. And are all the businesses coming in some of these areas? No. So, Mr. Mayor, I think Councilmember Watts had his light on.
Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it. This has been a long-term project, and it has been before council numerous times, numerous public workshops on it, input. I believe that we've had a great input on it. There's a lot of people that want it. They want Plot 28 done. They want those streets so that we can walkable, so that we don't have those lots, blank lots down there, empty lots. So I just feel like we've talked about this so much that we really do need to move forward. And this is the initial design phase. So right now, businesses won't be affected by it. But I would hope that as you move forward and having done streets, et cetera, before, that it will be planned accordingly. So to have minimal, as if that's, you know, an acceptable word here, business interference, et cetera, when this project does get off and start the ground and start renovating it. So I feel I'm for 3. I think that if staff can handle that while we're in the design phase, we might as well do the design phase of both of them. Thank you.
So thank you, brought up 3. I think 3 is a more conservative approach to see what the effect of Verde and Parkview are going to be. And it doesn't strap us. And in light of the potential for reduced revenues, I think I'd err on the side of caution. If I had to do the original, I would have voted against it entirely. Like I said, I kind of like the eclectic look of the town, and you know what you're getting into there, and there's a quaintness. So, but having not necessarily a gun to my head, but the lesser of the 3, I would say 3 is the most appropriate one because it's more conservative in nature and it benefits those that are not being served well now.
And I'll weigh in now. I think 3 as well. And again, I understand Councilwoman's point about affecting the avenue. However, this won't affect the avenue. It might just do more to draw more into the avenue for those businesses. So there won't be any construction happening on the avenue if we look at 3. And if we do 3, we do the design of Parkview and Verde River. then we see what brings more into the heart of the town. So I think that's probably the option that I would weigh in on. Vice Mayor?
If I may, just before we move on, I agree. I'll change my vote to option 3. I hadn't considered it how it had been explained earlier, so thank you to my fellow council members for that. Something that I want to keep in mind is that the construction, it's not 5 straight years of the whole downtown being shut down. We're doing well, 1, it's 4 years. 2, it's piecemeal. We have construction of Verde River while we design Parkview. We have construction of Parkview while we design east half of the avenue. We have construction of the east half of the avenue while we design the west half. And so it's quadrants at a time. We're doing this in a way that still allows people to enjoy our downtown and be a part of it as much as humanly possible while we're doing these updates. So I just wanted to make that note that it's going to sound really scary if people are going around and saying, you know, it's 5 years of construction on the avenue. It's not 5 years of construction on the avenue. So
I would also add that you've got other enhancements that are going to be happening on the avenue at the same time. So we're not just totally neglecting the avenue either at the same point. So there'll be a lot of stuff going on that I think it'll be all positive.
And even though it's quadrants, it's what happens to the traffic and the activity on the quadrant that's not being serviced at a particular point in time goes to the other quadrant. So you increase the flow, you increase traffic, et cetera. And the difficult part for me is that when I look at a project, Vice Mayor Toth was saying, build it and they will come. And the Roosevelt District is a great example of that. The Roosevelt District has done a phenomenal job of revitalizing and rejuvenating themselves, and it's worked. But they have a bigger draw. Their population is different down there. They don't have the same constraints that we have here. So I think, again, back to the quaintness of our town and the eclectic nature of the avenue as it is, the impact on the businesses in particular, I'm sticking with 3.
I hear option 3. Thank you. Oh, I'm like, who's saying hey? It's the guy behind me.
First, I'd like to thank all the guest speakers and appreciate their hard work on this. In closing, in regards to discussing the downtown, the town engineer and I, and under direction of the town manager, are working to leverage our $95,000 grant from MAG for the design of Parkview and kind of integrate it all into one. So that reduces our cost overall by $95,000. But most importantly, it allows us to get some of the very technical legwork done up front, which is the survey, the concepts, and the utility clearances. We'll know more about that in the coming days and weeks and come before council in regards to that and ask for an agreement with MAG to proceed. Now then, we've had an incredible amount of conversation. Again, thank you to all of you for your lunch and your generous contribution towards us. We've heard from some guest speakers. We discussed up front that everything on this list is a need based on mission statements and priorities for safety. And now we'd like to hear from you in regards to the color-coded coordination, which I refer to as a traffic signal.
All right, so once again, we have the opportunity to identify any yellow light projects or red light projects or green lights. So is there anything that jumps out to anybody here?
Do we have all the money for this one too?
We have built this budget based on what we believe will be available, yes. And so I'm going to caveat that because Paul doesn't feel comfortable until he knows all the formal numbers and all the officialness coming up. But yes, this was all built with the faith that based on all of our estimates, this all fits.
If they all are, then I would go for green.
Any other thoughts, comments? Okay, at this point, we will take them all as green, as well as the community services projects, and move forward like that.
Can I add to that real quick?
The conversation?
No. So I don't want to make things any more difficult for staff than they need to be, but I do think it's appropriate for Golden Eagle Impoundment to be yellow, just because it involves contingency and grant funding. So I think it would be appropriate for us to come back to council to explain anything that needs to be done for that one. That's just my stipulation on that one. My suggestion.
I'll second that. And I will actually add one other one that I think potentially, which is the community center improvements, because we don't know what they're for yet. It's just simply a placeholder. I think it makes sense for us to come back and talk to you guys about what we recommend for that money when we're ready to use it.
Some of these other projects will come back to us anyway.
If they're greenlit, not really.
I mean, the yellow ones, right?
Correct. So
Yeah.
right now, I only have two that are
Yeah.
identified as yellow, or at least that we are recommending as yellow, which is the community center and Golden Eagle Impoundment.
Oh, I would go with that then. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Thank
That's, no, that's fine. I appreciate Paul kind of sounding in and kind of making sure we have that check and balance built in.
And I'd like to throw yellow on the infill, sidewalk infill at Bashes.
Is anybody else?
Can you go back to the list again, please?
I will say that one is, for lack of a better way to say this, it's either a red or a green. Only because Justin is planning to begin work in June, and if we are going to do the project, we need to have the funding available into July and roll over into that next fiscal. If we don't want to do that project this year, if the Bashes sidewalk is not what we want to do, it would be difficult to get it done. Ideally, we're trying to get it done in the summertime. So it's kind of one of those, a consideration there.
Okay, then I'll change to red. And again, just simply because my constituents don't tell me that sidewalks are a priority, it's the roads.
Is there anybody else that wants to pull that project?
I do. I think that given the excellent work that you guys have done on the sidewalks and Palisades, et cetera, especially in front of the fire department and all, I mean, I think it's amazing. I think it really adds a lot to our town and walkability. And being on the pedestrian safety committee, that's one of the things that, you know, for the last couple of years we've been planning to have done. And unless, we're not going to be doing anything with the downtown project on Montana, and I think that people shop there so much, and you can connect it to the apartments at the end of the street there. I think that it would be great to have a sidewalk there for more walkability. It is a shopping center, and you want to invite people in there to spend money. So how do they get there? Sidewalk. So I think we should keep it.
Say I can go down individually, or, I mean, I'm looking for a majority here, one way or the other.
I also wanted to voice my disagreement. I like the sidewalk. I'm good with it. I'm a green light on it. I just wanted to say it out loud.
Yep, all right, so I have green,
green light.
you're a green light as well?
Are you talking about just the sidewalk infill in
Yes,
front of Bashes?
correct.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna continue and move forward on that one. So I have currently a yellow on the community center. We have the yellow on the Golden Eagle Impoundment.
Pedestrian crosswalks, there's got to be a way to encourage pedestrians out there. Can we like hire a school guard crossing or something? They don't use it. You know, they just don't use them. That's the problem. So $150,000 for something that isn't used, or have you had requests, numerous requests?
Mr. Mayor, council member, so human behavior is one of the most difficult things to predict or change. I will say this, and we're going to start with the one that has generated a considerable amount of criticism for myself and the former community services director, and that is the Desert Vista crossing. There was a considerable amount of criticism about that being constructed. However, it is used. And for anyone that is here during the cross-country event the high school holds at Fountain Park, if you come around Paul Norden and you see the number of grandparents with picnic lunches, backpacks, and water bottles heading over there to support their family and friends that use that curb opening and no longer have to climb up and over, that's a testament. There are a few other locations, including but not limited, to the people that elect to walk to the gym instead of drive there and park in front of the building that cross at gun sight. I see a positive impact here. However, I'm not able to change the behavior of some of the residents, also known as your neighbors.
I really need your get out of jail free card.
There was one other item. Are we finished here and are we okay with this list? So the Chief Financial Officer would like to make a couple of comments about the next one in regards to Shay. Did you have a comment about that, Paul? You mentioned Shay just as I was stepping up.
No, I think. Good talk. Yeah.
His questions have been cleared up.
I was just thinking with such a high visibility project, I shouldn't be up here. That was my mistake for mentioning it. But I was thinking maybe it should be a yellow light project, the Shea Boulevard widening, because it is such a high vis project. It relates to grant funding. But because of our timeline that we've discussed internally, it wouldn't make sense because we're trying to operationalize that during the summer break and get it going. So again, that was probably a mistake on my part. So.
It's been on our list for what, 10 years?
It has, it needs to get done. It is a high priority this year. But I will note that that kind of tees up the idea that, we talked about a lot of these won't come back. If they're greenlit, we're going to get going. But that doesn't mean you won't hear about progress. We've been shooting to do quarterly updates so that you understand where we are with things, what the progress is, timelines, et cetera. So at least you are, having these touch points with the projects that you just don't ever, you just never see them again. We want you to know what's going on with them and have that awareness. So I did want to point that out.
Justin, what is the timeline from beginning to end on Shay?
The intent is to come before the mayor and council before they go on summer break and ask for a notice of award. We're realistically looking at probably 15 months for that project because of the length of it. Also, we have to take into consideration the constraints we have related to the eastbound traffic flows. For anybody that comments that there's not much traffic on Shay, think about the limited number of times we've had to close a lane east of Palisades. The traffic is backed up all the way to 142nd Street. So there are constraints there that we need to address and minimize, but realistically, 15 months.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
I think we have our direction. You'll see these projects come back in the budget when we return. So that is my final question for this group, is that our budget review is scheduled for April 8th, which is a couple Tuesdays from now. I'd like to find out from the group. I know we've talked about times, when these meetings are or when they're not, what works best for some, does not work best for others. I'd like to get a direction as to what time those meetings should be.
Hi. I have a wedding and a honeymoon coming up, so selfishly, I'm out of PTO days, you guys, and I would really like to get paid on that Tuesday. If we could please do that in the evening, I would be so appreciative of everybody, or just 3 o'clock so that I only have to leave a little early. But these all-day things, I don't have any PTO days left. It's a real bummer. Thank you.
Councilmember asked how long that meeting can be. I said, it can be as long or short as you guys make it, but it is the deep dive. It is the deep dive of the budget. You will get budget books beforehand, so you'll have plenty of time to review them, and it's not just a ta-da, roll it out that day, but it is our chance to sort of talk about the budget and make any final adjustments before we begin the adoption process.
I'll add some of that. So I just feel like talking. We plan to have the budget books printed for your review by this Thursday or Monday. So I'll send an email out letting you know. So we will, for the public that's watching, we'll publish our proposed budget book for the public's consumption. We'll print out the books for mayor and council. And that's good timing with a council meeting next Tuesday. You can pick it up when you're here if you'd like to review it. And that'll give you over a week to review and ask any questions ahead of time if you'd like. Otherwise, we'll have the proposed budget session in 2 weeks from today.
That's actually encouraged. Ask the questions ahead of time, and the meeting goes a lot faster. So figure at least a couple hours for that meeting, probably.
I think it was almost 3 hours
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah. So if we get questions ahead of time, it could be shorter meeting.
Okay, so I'm the slow person on the dais. If we have all of this money that we just went through and had very, very few red lights, if any, and a couple of yellow lights. What are we discussing if the budget will already support it?
So the proposed budget work session is the entire budget as a whole.
You mean things you haven't told us?
No, we've talked about everything, but it's just presenting, by fund, this is how much we're budgeting. Really, what you can expect to see is the supplements we've discussed. We'll go over the supplements, the ones that are included in the budget. As a whole, this is how much is in the general fund, which we've already kind of talked about, the other funds as well. Some of the changes across the budget, things such as benefit rate increases, insurance increases. And other than that, we've already talked about the capital projects. We might get into some of the departmental budgets a little bit, but otherwise, it's just giving you the whole picture of what we've discussed. So if it goes quick, it goes quick, and that would probably be better for all of us. We'll see, but definitely we'll be open to any questions you have ahead of time or during the work session.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm most awake in the morning. I do best in the morning, but as a wedding gift to Hannah,
Okay.
Hannah, I would be willing to come at 3 o'clock for you.
That's perfectly fine. We will calendar that at 3 o'clock on the 8th to kind of capitalize on sort of bookend what you shared, Councilman Watts. Nothing should be a surprise when we get there. So with that being said, I think we're done for today. Whoop, oh, Paul.
I just got one sidebar. One key component of the proposed budget, for those that aren't familiar with our proposed budget work sessions, is we discuss cost of living adjustments for staff, and that's where we present the data like we did last year. This is the data we've compiled, what other municipalities are doing for their staff, CPI measures and things like that. So that is one key component that we will discuss and we'll take your direction on. So the proposed budget you get, that's not going to include any cost of living adjustment for staff. We add that into the tentative budget that we bring back in May. And that's it. That's all I have. Right. Yeah, I think.
Rachel, is that it for you?
That's it for me. Thank you.
Adjourn.